Anyone who knows me in pretty much any capacity will probably be able to tell you that The Lord of the Rings is my favorite movie. And yes, for the sake of this video, I will be calling the trilogy of movies one movie. First, to make my life easier, and second, because these movies are one story, and in my mind, they are all part of one 12-hour film. From a filmmaking perspective, they are as close to perfection as we can get. Everything about them feels timeless, beautiful, and purely perfect cinema. But other people have already talked about everything that makes these movies so amazing, and they've been analyzed and discussed in extreme depth over the years. So why, 20 years later, are we still talking about it? And why should I, someone born the same year as the last movie came out, feel the need to inject myself into the conversation this late? Well, because they've had a long-lasting effect on me in my life, and the way I act as a man, as a friend, and a brother have all been affected by my consumption of these films throughout the years. One might say my character has been greatly affected by these characters, and I want to explore how these characters have changed my life as they've changed the lives of a generation before me, and they most likely will change the lives of a generation after me. So join me as I examine what The Lord of the Rings has meant to me. Okay, so I know I said I wasn't going to talk about why these films are great films, but come on, there's no way I wasn't going to mention it. As all good movies ought to, The Lord of the Rings entertains supremely. Constantly perfect shots, combined with a flawless score, amazing costumes, incredible acting, and revolutionary special effects make for a cinematic experience unlike any other. Especially when it comes to the special effects, these movies were revolutionary. Just look at Gollum, for example, one of Hollywood's very first fully CG characters that honestly looks about as good as the constant sludge of Marvel CG today. But anyway, let's be honest, when you first come to Lord of the Rings, the biggest draw is the fights and the battle sequences, with incredible detail from the smallest duel to the biggest sieges. I get goosebumps pretty much constantly during these sequences, from Aragorn swatting away the knife that's being thrown at him, to the rush of thousands of ghosts clearing Minas Tirith. Every fight, every duel, every battle is unique, exciting, and extremely entertaining. I mean, come on, I could watch this shot of Legolas dispatching orcs forever. It's just so dang cool. I think a large part of what makes these battles and fights so incredible is the aforementioned special effects and the commitment to practical effects. Also, practical swords, horses, armor, all of which when combined together gives every frame the detail it needs to feel real, which in turn makes the world feel more lived in and allows for an escapist experience while watching these films where you're transported into an incredible fantasy world. They are, from every aspect, incredible films, but the real reason I feel these films have stuck with me my whole life is because of the incredible characters, which I want to spend the majority of the rest of this video talking about, specifically how specific characters affected my life personally, and I want to start that journey off with Aragorn. Aragorn is, in my opinion, one of the best male characters ever put to screen. He is a perfect example of what a man ought to be, and throughout my life, and specifically throughout my journey from adolescence into manhood, I always had Aragorn to be an example of a character I could aspire to be. He is extremely masculine. He is dark, serious, strong, and very good at traditionally masculine things such as hand-to-hand combat or survival skills. But as good as he is at those things, he also is extremely intelligent, emotionally mature, and has the wisdom to do what is right and be a leader. He loves, cares, sings, and cries, and he shows how much he cares for the people around him in the way that he treats them with respect, regardless of who they are or what their motivations are. When things get hardest, like when the Fellowship loses Gandalf, he also has the leadership qualities to get the group moving again, not because he is emotionally immature, but because he knows that they are in danger and knows that there will be a time for grieving later, but at the moment, they need to move on. And that's not even mentioning the way that he treats women, respectfully, honestly, humbly, And this goes for all the women he meets, not only the ones that he is in love with. I only hope that my relationship with women, romantically or otherwise, is seen with the same respect that Aragorn shows to Arwen and Eowyn. He is exactly the kind of man that I wanted to be growing up, and still the man I want to become. And if ever I find myself in a position of power, as Aragorn does at the end, I want to have the humility to know how I got there, that the journey to where I am was only possible because of the brave people around me, helping me along the way. A major part of my journey into manhood has been an attempt to be like Aragorn, and even though I may not have the physical capabilities that he does, I certainly look up to his character for the quality he holds: a humble, honest, respectful, loving, wise, and mature man. Beyond Aragorn, the films provide a whole list of characters who at some point throughout my life I have felt connected to. When I was younger, I always felt a very strong connection to Faramir, who, by the way, is hands down the most underrated character in the whole of Lord of the Rings, because of the pressure forced upon him to be like his brother Boromir. I think I speak for all of my brothers when I say that there was a constant competition between us to live up to the expectation of our parents, and the better my siblings were at something, the better I felt I had to be, which honestly still motivates me to this day. And while I certainly would never compare my parents to Denethor, as they've always been very loving and supportive of my pursuits, I certainly feel a connection to Faramir in the sense that he's tried so hard to be what is expected of him, yet those in authority over him continually say that he isn't good enough yet. I feel like a lot of people can connect to that feeling. Along with Faramir, and in my high school career especially, I always felt a connection to Pippin. Pippin is always having a good time, yes, but he also wants to be able to help people, even if he doesn't know how. I connect to that feeling of wanting to be fun and carefree, but also wanting to help, and other people not understanding that feeling. And now that I'm in college, I relate a lot to Merry, especially Return of the King Merry, because I have been separated from my best friends, and surrounded by stronger people than me, stronger academically, mentally, and physically. And I just want to be able to make a difference. Even though I may not be as strong as others, I could still be there and, get an assist for killing one of the most powerful enemies that ever existed. And of course, there's Frodo, and I think everyone can relate to his journey, which is something I'll touch on later. But to be honest, there is only one character who I have always and hope I will always attempt to be like, and that's Sam, which brings me to my next point. Sam and Frodo have perhaps the best on-screen friendship I've ever seen. I think it's safe to say that the real hero of The Lord of the Rings is Sam, who continuously, despite Frodo's protest, sticks with his friend not only because he was told by Gandalf to do so, but also because he knows that it is the right thing to do and the best thing to do for his friend. He knows that Frodo is going to need him, and even when Frodo unjustly pushes him away, Sam, of his own free will choose to be loyal, to stick with him, and it pays off. Sam is the real hero of the story because his friendship with Frodo trumps all the things in the world: Nazgul, Gollum, Shelob, and even the burden of carrying the ring. Sam knows how important Frodo's goal is, and as his friend, he helps him to make it happen by pushing Frodo to the finish line, and when that doesn't work, carrying him those final steps. It's a beautiful picture of pure friendship. Sam, throughout the story, helps Frodo carry his incredible burden because he wants him to be happy too. You can see on Frodo's face how much Sam means to him, from the smiling faces at the beginning of the story to the sad farewell as Frodo leaves with the elves at the end. Their friendship is a perfect example of what friends should be to each other: loyal, caring, and loving, knowing what is best for each other, accepting their flaws, and pushing or carrying them when they're too tired to do it on their own. In my life, I have tried to have friends like Frodo and Sam by being loyal accepting their flaws, and being with them through all of the challenges this world has to offer, and carrying them when no one else can. I hope that all of my friendships, and especially that of my best friend, are like this. Finally, I want to talk about how The Lord of the Rings is a metaphor for my life as a Christian. Now, I know that not everyone who watches this, or Lord of the Rings for that matter, is religious, but I am, and so was J.R.R. Tolkien when he wrote this, and Frodo's journey of bearing the ring is a pretty clear metaphor for carrying sin. Even if you are not religious, I think you can relate to this because everyone, or everyone sane anyway, has something that weighs them down, has some guilt, shame, trauma, hurt, pain, or hardship that they have been through and have had to carry throughout life. Often these things are thrust upon you and may be the result of something entirely outside of your control, but you have that weight to bear now, your ring to carry. Whatever it is, your journey to Mount Doom will be too hard to carry on your own. You may need guidance from the wise, help from a close friend, or even a healthy fear of what you might become should you carry that burden for too long. So now, going into this with my Christian view, please feel free to interchange the word sin with any weight you bear. The ring itself is the manifestation of sin, and while you may be tempted to let that burden control you for short-term gain, ultimately it falls into the hands of the evils of this world. Now, more personally, Frodo's journey is a complex metaphor for my life as a Christian. In my journey through this life, I have tried to discard the sins that I have, and there are people around me who care for me and help me achieve that. But without Christ, I, like Frodo, despite all the people who have given so much for me to make it to my Mount Doom, choose to sin every single time. Frodo ultimately does not throw in the ring, reminding me that I ultimately do not redeem myself from my sin, but Christ redeems me. Christ takes my ring, takes my burdens, sins, and he throws them into the fire, something I never could do, no matter how much help I get along the way. Gollum's role in this metaphor becomes even more potent, as he is the manifestation of what I fear my sin could turn me into. And if I let my sin become precious to me, then I will hurl myself into the fire with it. Without Christ, I am Gollum, a shriveled, obsessed, and broken mess that may have morality like Smeagol, but ultimately my sinful nature, or Gollum, takes control. But thank God that I do not have to throw the ring in myself, that Christ throws it in for me, that the people who have helped me and carried me on this journey have not poured their lives out for me in vain. And I no longer have to live a life carrying the heavy burden that was never meant for me to carry alone. Now, if that was all too religious for you, just know that I find a lot of peace and hope in that metaphor. And ultimately, I love The Lord of the Rings as a story because that metaphor has helped me throughout my life to deal with the problems that life has for me, all the pain, burden, and hardship. Hopefully, anyone can understand that. Overall, The Lord of the Rings is my favorite movie, not only because it is perfect from a filmmaker's point of view, but because it has enduring characters and themes that I've been able to relate to and learn from at different points in my life. There are nearly endless lessons to be learned from Lord of the Rings, as I only covered some of the biggest and most influential parts that have had the most profound effect on my life. These movies have been an integral part of my childhood and my development into the person I am today, and I hope to keep The Lord of the Rings with me as I continue my journey forward into the next stage of life, wherever that may bring me. If you haven't watched The Lord of the Rings in a while, I implore you to sit down and soak them in. Or better yet, read the books, since they dive even deeper into the characters' thoughts, motivations, and feelings. Consider what the characters can teach you about your life and how their journeys relate to your own. You won't regret it. But anyway, that is what The Lord of the Rings means to me.